The day I became a wife, I chose not to reveal the 3 apartments my grandmother left me. And thank God I stayed silent because just 7 days later, an unexpected visitor arrived with a notary. Her confident smile didn't last long. Everyone was focused on me and Morgan, my groom, the man I had just married, as we exchanged vows and slipped rings onto each other's fingers. But my eyes weren't on him, not in that moment. They were locked on someone else, his sister Ruby. Her smile didn't match the occasion. It was too practiced, too confident, and far too early. She was already celebrating something I hadn't agreed to. That's when I knew, keeping my grandmother's 3 apartments a secret had been the smartest decision I'd ever made. The reception was buzzing with congratulations and clinking glasses, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Ruby knew something. During the cake cutting, she whispered to Morgan's mother, their heads bent close together like they were sharing state secrets. When I caught her eye, she gave me that same unsettling smile and raised her champagne glass in my direction. To family, she called out, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. To sharing everything. The words sent a chill down my spine. I forced myself to smile back, but inside my grandmother's voice echoed crystal clear. Protect what's yours, Blake. Even from the ones you love. Before we continue, I want to thank you for joining me in sharing these stories about protecting what's rightfully ours. If you believe women should guard their financial independence, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more women who need to hear this. Now let's see how this unfolds. Grandma Rose had drilled this into me from the time I was 12 years old, sitting in her tiny kitchen while she counted rent money from her tenants. She'd escaped poverty by saving every penny, buying her first apartment with cash she'd hidden in mason jars. Then she bought another. Then another. 3 apartments in total. Modest but solid, in neighborhoods that grew more valuable every year. These aren't just buildings, she'd tell me, spreading the lease agreements across her dining table. They're freedom. They're security. They're proof that a woman can stand on her own 2 feet. She'd lived through the Great Depression, watched her own mother lose everything when her father left. Grandma Rose swore she'd never be vulnerable like that again. And she'd raised me to think the same way. When she passed 6 months ago, I was devastated. But I was also shocked. The lawyer read her will in a sterile office that smelled like old coffee and floor polish. The 3 apartments were mine. All of them. Worth nearly $400,000 combined. I'd sat in that leather chair, staring at the documents, remembering her final words to me in the hospital. Don't tell anyone right away, she'd whispered, her voice barely audible. Watch first. See who they really are when they think you have nothing to offer. Now, watching Ruby at my own wedding reception, I understood what she meant. Morgan's family had been perfectly pleasant during our engagement. Polite dinners, small talk about the weather and Morgan's job at the insurance company. But I'd noticed things. Little comments about how lucky Morgan was to find someone so practical. How I seemed like the type who'd fit right in with their family values. Ruby had been especially curious about my living situation. Why was I renting when I could probably afford to buy? Didn't I have any family money? What about my grandmother's estate? Surely there must have been something. I deflected every question with vague answers and subject changes. Let them think I was just a teacher getting by on my modest salary. Let them assume I was marrying Morgan for security rather than love. But tonight something had shifted. Ruby's questions had stopped, but her attention had intensified. She kept glancing at me during the speeches, her expression calculating. When Morgan's father toasted new beginnings and shared futures, Ruby's eyes fixed on me like she was solving a puzzle. During the dancing, she cornered me near the gift table. You know, Blake, she said, adjusting her pearl necklace, I've been thinking about your living situation. That apartment you're renting, it's not exactly suitable for a married couple, is it? I took a sip of my wine, buying time. It's fine for now. Oh, but Morgan deserves better. We all do. Her smile was sharp around the edges. I've been looking into some investment opportunities. Family investments. The kind where everyone benefits. That's nice, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I think you'd be surprised what opportunities open up when families pool their resources. He paused, watching my reaction. Especially when someone unexpectedly comes into money. My heart stopped. How could she know? I'd been so careful. The inheritance had been handled through Grandma Rose's private attorney, not the family lawyer. I'd deposited the rental income into a separate account Morgan had never seen. "I'm not sure what you mean," I said carefully. Ruby's laugh was like glass breaking. "Oh Blake, you're sweeter than I thought. But don't worry. Family takes care of family. We'll talk soon." She walked away, leaving me standing there with my wine glass trembling in my hand. I watched her rejoin Morgan's parents, saw them glance in my direction, saw their subtle nods of understanding. They knew. Somehow they knew about the apartments. I found Morgan on the dance floor, spinning with his young niece. When the song ended, I pulled him aside. "Can we talk for a minute?" "Sure, Mrs. Thompson." He grinned at using my new name. "What's wrong? You look pale." I almost told him everything right then. The apartments, the inheritance, Ruby's strange comments. But something held me back. Maybe it was the way his family had circled around us all evening, like sharks sensing blood in the water. Maybe it was the memory of my grandmother's weathered hands gripping mine in that hospital bed. "Nothing's wrong," I said instead. "I just wanted to say I love you." He kissed my forehead. "I love you too. More than you know." As we swayed to the music, I caught Ruby watching us from across the room. She was talking to someone on her phone, her free hand gesturing animatedly. When she saw me looking, she smiled and waved, but her eyes were cold. I made a decision in that moment. Whatever Ruby was planning, whatever she thought she knew, I would wait. I would watch. I would let her make the first move while I prepared my defense. The 3 apartments weren't just my inheritance. They were my insurance policy. And I'd be damned if I'd let anyone take them away from me before I even understood what I was fighting for. The band played our last dance as husband and wife, and I held Morgan close, feeling the weight of my secrets between us. I loved him, but I also loved the security my grandmother had given me. And if Ruby wanted to play games, she'd soon learn that I'd been taught by the best. Some secrets are worth keeping even from the people you love most. Especially from the people you love most. 7 days of married bliss shattered with 3 sharp knocks on my front door. I was folding laundry in my small living room, humming along to the radio when the knocking came. Not the casual rap of a neighbor or the gentle tap of a delivery person. This was authoritative. Demanding. The kind of knock that says, "I'm here on business." Through the peephole, I saw Ruby standing on my doorstep, but she wasn't alone. A woman in a navy blazer stood beside her, holding a leather briefcase like it contained the crown jewels. Ruby was dressed to kill. Sharp black pantsuit, hair pulled back in a perfect bun, lipstick that could cut glass. She looked like she was heading to a corporate takeover, not a casual visit with her new sister-in-law. "Blake." Ruby's voice rang out, sweet as honey but with an edge that made my skin crawl. "I know you're in there. I brought coffee from that little shop you mentioned loving." I opened the door slowly, keeping the chain latch engaged. "Ruby, what are you doing here?" "Oh, don't be silly." She held up a cardboard tray with 2 expensive-looking cups. "I thought we could have a chat. Sister to sister. And I brought my friend Patricia. She's a notary. Just in case we need to make anything official." My stomach dropped. A notary. On a Tuesday morning. Unannounced. "I wasn't expecting company," I said, still not unhooking the chain. "The best conversations happen when you're not expecting them." Ruby's smile was dazzling, but her eyes were calculating. "Come on, Blake. Let us in." Patricia drove all the way from downtown. Patricia, the notary, stepped forward. She was probably in her 50s, with graying hair and the kind of professional demeanor that said she'd witnessed 1,000 signatures on 1,000 documents. "I apologize for the surprise visit, Mrs. Thompson." Ruby explained this was time-sensitive. Time-sensitive. My grandmother's voice whispered in my memory. When someone rushes you into signing papers, run the other way. But curiosity won over caution. I unhooked the chain and stepped back, watching as Ruby swept into my apartment like she owned it. She set the coffee on my kitchen counter and immediately began scanning my living space with sharp eyes. "Cozy," she said, and somehow made it sound like an insult. "Very minimalist." Patricia remained by the door, professional and uncomfortable. "Perhaps we should discuss what brings us here today?" Ruby waved her hand dismissively. "All in good time. First, coffee." She pushed one of the cups toward me. "Double-shot vanilla latte. Your favorite, right?" I'd never mentioned my coffee preference to Ruby. Ever. But somehow she knew. "How did you?" "Oh, I asked around." Ruby's laugh was light, but her eyes were watching my reaction carefully. Morgan mentioned it. Or maybe it was your friend Sarah from school. Small world, you know. I didn't know any Sarah from school. And Morgan drank his coffee black. He wouldn't know a vanilla latte from a cappuccino. Ruby, I said slowly, what's this really about? She perched on the edge of my couch, crossing her legs elegantly. Well, since you asked directly, it's about family. About making sure everyone is taken care of now that you're officially one of us. Patricia cleared her throat. Perhaps I should explain the documents? Oh yes, the paperwork. Ruby clapped her hands together like she'd just remembered a delightful surprise. Patricia has prepared some simple forms. Nothing complicated. Just a way to streamline our family finances now that you and Morgan are married. Streamline how? Ruby's smile never wavered. Joint financial planning. Shared resources. The kind of thing that makes sense when families merge. It's really quite beneficial for everyone involved. Patricia opened her briefcase and withdrew a folder thick with papers. These are standard consolidation forms. They allow for more efficient management of family assets. I took the folder but didn't open it. Assets. Oh, you know. Ruby waved her hand vaguely. Properties, investments, that sort of thing. Nothing you need to worry about. We'll handle all the details. The word, properties, hit me like a physical blow. They knew. They definitely knew about the apartments. I'm not sure I understand, I said, playing dumb. Morgan and I keep our finances separate. For now. Ruby's tone was patient, like she was explaining something obvious to a child. But married couples should think bigger. Long term. Especially when there are opportunities to maximize everyone's benefits. I opened the folder and scanned the first page. Legal jargon filled the document, but certain phrases jumped out. Transfer of property rights, consolidated ownership, family trust management. This looks like you want me to sign over. Not sign over, Ruby interrupted quickly. Consolidate. Pool resources. It's completely different. Patricia shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Thompson, I should mention that these documents do require careful review. Perhaps you'd like to have your own attorney. Oh, that's not necessary, Ruby cut her off. We're family. We trust each other. But I was remembering someone else now. My college roommate who'd convinced me to co-sign a credit card, just for emergencies. She'd used that same tone, that same smile when she'd maxed out the card and left me with the debt. You know, I said, closing the folder, this reminds me of someone I used to know. She was always trying to help me with my finances too. Ruby's smile flickered. Just for a second. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. She was very convincing. Very helpful. Right up until she cleaned out my bank account. Blake, I'm hardly going to steal from you. Ruby's laugh was sharp now. We're family. Jessica said the same thing. Called me her sister. Said she was looking out for my best interests. Patricia was looking increasingly uncomfortable. Perhaps we should reschedule this meeting. Give Mrs. Thompson time to review. No, Ruby said firmly. We're here now. The paperwork is ready. There's no reason to delay. I stood up, still holding the folder. Actually, there is. I'd like to know something first. What? I looked directly into Ruby's eyes. Who told you about my inheritance? The question hung in the air like smoke. Ruby's face went through a series of micro-expressions. Surprise, calculation, then that practiced smile again. I'm not sure what you mean. The apartments. The rental income. The inheritance from my grandmother. Who told you? Patricia was staring at Ruby now, clearly realizing she'd been brought into something she didn't fully understand. Ruby's eyes flickered. Just for a moment her mask slipped and I saw something cold and calculating underneath. I don't know anything about apartments. But her voice was different now. Defensive. And I knew without a doubt that she was lying. Interesting, I said softly. Because I never mentioned apartments. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Ruby's coffee cup trembled slightly in her hand. Patricia cleared her throat. Perhaps I should go. No, I said, my voice stronger now. I think Patricia should stay. I think she should hear exactly what kind of paperwork she's been asked to notarize. Ruby's confident smile was cracking at the edges. And for the first time since she'd knocked on my door, I felt like I was the one in control. Ruby left 20 minutes later, her confidence visibly shaken. Patricia packed up her briefcase with obvious relief, mumbling apologies about miscommunication and proper legal counsel. But I barely heard them go. My mind was racing, connecting dots I'd been too naive to see before. The moment their car pulled away, I grabbed my laptop and started digging. First, I called the coffee shop Ruby claimed to know I loved. The barista who answered had never heard of anyone named Ruby asking about customer preferences. Strike one. Then I checked my building's security system. As a teacher, I'd learned to be thorough when something didn't add up. Our apartment complex had cameras in the lobby and parking garage. Not the best quality, but good enough to see who came and went. What I found made my blood run cold. There was Ruby, clear as day, talking to my landlord Mr. Peterson 3 days ago. They stood outside his office for nearly 10 minutes, Ruby gesturing animatedly while Mr. Peterson nodded and wrote something down. When their conversation ended, Ruby handed him what looked like a business card. I screenshot the timestamp and kept searching. Ruby had been busy. The real estate office 2 blocks from my apartment had security cameras facing the street. Through the public records website, I could see their footage from last week. There was Ruby again, this time with an older man I didn't recognize, pointing at building addresses and taking notes. But the discovery that made me physically sick came when I checked the security footage from Morgan's parents' neighborhood. My mother-in-law had mentioned their community had installed new cameras after a break-in last month. The footage was accessible to residents through an online portal. I found what I was looking for on Sunday night, 2 days before Ruby's surprise visit. Ruby's silver BMW was parked in the Thompsons' driveway at 8:47 p.m. She stayed for over 2 hours. Through the grainy video, I could see figures moving around inside the house, shadows cast against the living room window. At one point, someone spread papers across what looked like the dining room table. This wasn't a casual visit. This was a planning session. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone. I needed answers and I knew exactly who to call. Harold Brennan's office, came the familiar voice of my grandmother's lawyer's secretary. Margaret, it's Blake Thompson. Blake Williams, that was. Is Mr. Brennan available? It's urgent. Within minutes, Harold's gravelly voice came through the phone. Blake dear, I was wondering when I'd hear from you. How's married life treating you? Harold, someone knows about the apartments. They came to my house today with papers to sign. A long pause. I see. Tell me everything. I spilled the whole story, Ruby's visit, the notary, the security footage. Harold listened without interrupting, occasionally making small humming sounds that meant he was thinking hard. Blake, he said finally, your grandmother specifically warned me this might happen. She made me promise to tell you something if anyone came sniffing around. What? She had me run background checks on Morgan's family before you got engaged. Nothing invasive, just public records. Financial history, business dealings, that sort of thing. My heart sank. What did you find? Morgan's father has been struggling. His construction business took on too much debt during the pandemic. They're leveraged to the hilt and the bank is getting nervous. 3 months behind on commercial loan payments. I closed my eyes. How much debt? Nearly $200,000. And your 3 apartments? They're worth exactly what he needs to get back in the black. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Ruby wasn't trying to help me. She was trying to help her father. More than that, I'm afraid. I did some digging after your call. There's been talk in certain circles about using residential properties as collateral for commercial loans. It's risky, often illegal if done without proper disclosure, but it's been happening. Could they actually use my apartments without my knowledge? If they could get your signature on the right documents? Absolutely. The papers you described sound like they might have been designed to create a family trust with your properties as assets. Once that's established, any family member with signing authority could potentially leverage those assets. I felt like the floor was falling away beneath me. Harold, I need to know, did you tell anyone about the inheritance? Anyone at all? Absolutely not. Your grandmother was very specific about confidentiality. But Blake, there are other ways information gets out. Public records, for instance. Property transfers have to be filed with the county. Someone could have been watching the filings? It's possible. Or someone could have hired a private investigator. If they suspected you'd inherited something. The front door opened and Morgan's voice called out. Blake, you home. I lowered my voice. Harold, I have to go. But I need those properties protected. Whatever it takes. Consider it done. I'll start paperwork tomorrow morning to put them in an irrevocable trust. No one will be able to touch them without your explicit, witnessed consent. Thank you. Blake, your grandmother was a smart woman. He saw this coming. Don't let them make you feel guilty for protecting what's yours. Morgan appeared in the doorway as I hung up, his tie loosened and hair disheveled. He looked exhausted, older somehow than he had that morning. Hey, he said, kissing my forehead absently. Sorry I'm late. Long day at the office. How was work? I asked, studying his face carefully. Fine. Boring insurance stuff. He moved toward the kitchen, avoiding my eyes. What did you do today? This was my moment. I could tell him about Ruby's visit, about the papers, about everything I'd discovered. Instead, I heard myself say, not much. Ran some errands. He nodded, already distracted, pulling leftovers from the refrigerator. Good. Hey, Ruby called me at work today. Said she stopped by to visit with you. My blood turned to ice. Oh. Yeah, she mentioned something about family financial planning. Said it went well. He glanced at me over the takeout container. That's nice, right? That she's including you in family discussions. Including me. Like I was a new member being inducted into their club. What exactly did she tell you? I asked carefully. Morgan shrugged. Just that she had some ideas about how we could all benefit from pooling resources. Smart thinking, really. Ruby's always been good with money. Did she mention what kind of resources? Properties, investments, that sort of thing. She said you seemed interested. He smiled at me, completely oblivious to the storm raging in my chest. I'm proud of you for being open to it. I know family finances can be overwhelming. Overwhelming. Like I was some delicate flower who couldn't handle adult conversations about money. Morgan, I said slowly, did you know your father is in financial trouble? His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. What? No, that's not. Where did you hear that? Does it matter where I heard it? Dad's business is fine. Ruby would have told me if there were problems. Ruby would have told him. Not his father. Ruby. I watched my husband, the man I'd promised to love and honor just 1 week ago, and realized with crushing clarity that he wasn't my partner in this. He was part of their team. Maybe he didn't know all the details, maybe he wasn't actively plotting against me, but when push came to shove, his loyalty lay with his family. And I was the outsider they were trying to use. You're right, I said softly. Ruby probably would have told you. He smiled, relieved that I'd dropped the subject. Exactly. Ruby looks out for all of us. She's just trying to help. Those words, just trying to help, echoed in my ears as I watched him eat his dinner, scrolling through his phone, completely unaware that his sister had tried to steal from his wife just hours earlier. I wasn't just fighting Ruby anymore. I was fighting a family that saw me as a resource to be managed, not a person to be respected. And my own husband was helping them do it, one dismissive conversation at a time. The next morning, I woke up before Morgan and made coffee in the dark kitchen, my mind crystal clear for the first time in days. I had two choices: confront him about his family's schemes, or play their own game better than they could. I chose silence. While Morgan showered, I called Harold Brennan's office and left a message with Margaret. Tell him it's urgent. I need those properties protected today, not tomorrow. Harold called back within an hour. Blake, I've been up since 5 working on this. Can you meet me at my office at noon? I'll have the trust documents ready. What kind of trust? An irrevocable asset protection trust. Once it's established, no one, and I mean no one, can touch those properties without your explicit written consent. Not your husband, not his family, not even a court order in most cases. Will Morgan need to know? Harold paused. As your spouse, he has certain legal rights to community property, but since these apartments were inherited before your marriage, they remain separate property. The trust makes that separation ironclad. Do it. At noon, I sat in Harold's oak-paneled office signing papers that would make my apartments untouchable. Each signature felt like armor going on piece by piece. One more thing, Harold said, sliding a final document across his desk. I'm establishing a management company for the properties. All rental income will flow through it, keeping your personal finances completely separate. If anyone comes asking, they'll hit a legal wall. How long will this take to finalize? It's already done. Filed with the county 20 minutes ago. He smiled grimly. Your grandmother would be proud. I walked out of that office feeling like a different person. Not the naive newlywed who'd almost been taken advantage of, but someone with real power. The apartments weren't just mine anymore. They were protected. That afternoon Ruby called. Blake, sweetie, how are you settling into married life? Fine, I said, stirring pasta sauce and keeping my voice neutral. Good. You know, I've been thinking about our conversation the other day. About family financial planning. Oh. I realize we might have overwhelmed you with all those papers. Patricia felt terrible about springing everything on you like that. Patricia had looked relieved to leave, not terrible, but I let it slide. These things take time, I said. Exactly. That's why I thought we could start smaller. Maybe just a simple joint account to begin with. Nothing complicated. Just something that shows you're part of something bigger now. Part of something bigger. The phrase made my skin crawl, but I kept my voice steady. That's thoughtful of you to think of me. Of course. We're family. And family takes care of each other. She paused. Actually, I was wondering, have you given any thought to what you might contribute to our little family fund? Here it was. The fishing expedition. Contribute. Well, everyone brings something to the table. Morgan has his salary, Dad has the business, Mom has her savings. It would be nice to know what you're comfortable adding to the mix. I took a deep breath. I'm just a teacher, Ruby. I don't have much to contribute. Oh, don't sell yourself short. I'm sure there are things you're not even thinking of. Property, investments, inheritance. She was getting bolder, less subtle. Good. Desperate people made mistakes. Not really, I said. Grandma Rose left me some sentimental things, but nothing valuable. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Sentimental things, she repeated finally. Family photos, some jewelry. You know how it is. Right. Of course. But her voice had changed, become sharper. Well, we should get together soon. Plan something fun. Maybe I could come over for dinner. That sounds nice. I'll check with Morgan. After I hung up, I realized my hands were shaking. Not from fear but from adrenaline. I was lying to her face and it felt good. That evening, Morgan came home with flowers. What's the occasion? I asked, genuinely surprised. No occasion. Just thought my wife deserved flowers. He kissed my cheek, but his smile seemed forced. Ruby mentioned you two had a nice chat today. We did. She's really excited about including you in family planning. It means a lot to her. I arranged the flowers in a vase, choosing my words carefully. She mentioned something about a joint account. Morgan's face lit up. Yeah. Great idea, right? Pool some resources, help everyone out. Very modern thinking. Whose idea was it originally? Ruby's, I think. Or maybe Dad's. Hard to remember. He was already moving toward the refrigerator, dismissing the conversation. They've been talking about family finances a lot lately. Because of your father's business? Morgan froze with his hand on the refrigerator door. What about Dad's business? You mentioned it was struggling. I never said that. Yesterday when I asked about Blake, Dad's business is fine. I don't know where you're getting these ideas. His voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Ruby thinks maybe you're feeling insecure about money, being new to the family and all. Ruby thinks. Everything came back to what Ruby thinks. I'm not insecure, I said quietly. Of course not. But it might be easier if you just trusted us to handle the financial stuff. We've been doing this longer than you have. The condescension in his voice was breathtaking. Like I was a child who needed guidance with her allowance. You're probably right, I said and watched him relax. Over the next few days I perfected the art of strategic ignorance. When Ruby called asking about organizing my paperwork, I claimed to be too busy with lesson planning. When she suggested we meet for lunch to discuss options, I had parent-teacher conferences. When she mentioned how nice it would be to get everything sorted before the holidays, I agreed enthusiastically while committing to nothing. Each deflection made her more aggressive. Blake, I'm starting to feel like you're avoiding me, she said during her third call that week. Not avoiding, just busy. Teaching is hectic this time of year. Well, maybe Morgan could help you get organized. He's good with paperwork. Maybe. Or I could come over this weekend. We could make a girls' day of it. Go through everything together. The idea of Ruby in my apartment looking through my belongings made my stomach turn. This weekend isn't great for me. Next weekend then. I'll have to check my calendar. Another long pause. Blake, is everything okay? You seem distant lately. I'm fine. Because if you're having second thoughts about joining the family financially, we should talk about it. As women, you know you can trust me, right? Trust. The word every con artist used right before they struck. Of course I trust you. Good. Because I'd hate for there to be any misunderstandings between us. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. I'd been too evasive and Ruby was getting suspicious. That night, Morgan came home later than usual, his jaw tight with tension. Ruby's worried about you, he said without preamble. Worried how? She thinks you're pulling away from the family. Being secretive. I'm not being secretive. Aren't you? You won't commit to any of their financial planning meetings. You keep making excuses. I told you I'm busy with Blake. Morgan sat down across from me, his expression serious. What aren't you telling me? For a moment I considered coming clean. Telling him about the apartments, about Ruby's manipulation, about everything I'd discovered. But then I looked at his face. Earnest, concerned, but also defensive when it came to his family. Nothing, I said. I'm not hiding anything. Then prove it. Come to dinner Sunday. Ruby's making her famous lasagna. We can all sit down and talk about this financial planning thing like adults. It wasn't a request. It was an ultimatum. Hey, I said. Sunday dinner sounds nice. Morgan smiled and kissed my forehead, but I could feel the calculation behind it. They were closing ranks and I was being herded toward whatever trap they'd prepared. But they didn't know that I'd spent the week building walls they couldn't breach. My silence hadn't been weakness, it had been strategy. And now finally it was time to let them make their move. Sunday dinner would be interesting indeed. Sunday dinner never happened. Instead, Ruby showed up at my door Tuesday morning with Patricia in tow again, but this time everything was different. Ruby's confidence radiated from every pore as she strutted up my walkway in designer heels, carrying a leather portfolio that screamed expensive legal preparation. Blake, darling, she called through the door, her voice sickeningly sweet. I have wonderful news. We've simplified everything for you. Patricia looked uncomfortable again, but more resigned this time. Like she'd been paid enough to push through her reservations. I opened the door wearing my oldest jeans and a faded college sweatshirt. Let her think I was unprepared. Ruby. Patricia. Back so soon. Well, you know how family is. We just couldn't wait to get this sorted out. Ruby swept past me into my living room like she owned it. And this time we've done all the hard work for you. She spread documents across my coffee table with theatrical flourish. These weren't the vague forms from last week. These were specific, detailed, with my name already filled in at the bottom, waiting only for signatures. Property transfer agreements, Ruby announced proudly. All prepared and ready to go. We even included the addresses. My blood turned to ice. There, in black and white, were the exact addresses of my 3 apartments. Not approximate locations or general descriptions. The precise street numbers, unit designations, even the correct zip codes. How did you get these addresses? I asked quietly. Ruby's smile was triumphant. Oh, Blake, did you really think we wouldn't find out? Property records are public information. All it took was hiring someone who knew where to look. Someone. A very talented private investigator. Cost us a pretty penny, but family is worth the investment. She tapped the papers with one manicured finger. 3 apartments in excellent neighborhoods. Combined value of approximately $400,000. Very impressive for a teacher. Patricia shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Thompson, I want to be clear that these documents will transfer full ownership. Full partnership, Ruby corrected sharply. We're creating a family trust for everyone's benefit. The legal language specifies transfer of ownership, Patricia insisted, her professional ethics apparently finally kicking in. Ruby's mask slipped for just a moment, irritation flashing across her features before the smile returned. Technicalities. The important thing is we're all in this together now. I sat down slowly, studying the papers. They were thorough, professionally prepared, and completely fraudulent in their intent. These must have been expensive to prepare, I said. Oh, don't worry about that. Consider it our investment in your future. Ruby perched on the edge of my couch, practically vibrating with excitement. All you have to do is sign and Patricia will notarize everything. Then we can really start building something together. Building what? Security, Blake. Real security. Your little apartments will be part of something bigger, something that can actually grow and produce serious income. I looked up at her. And what happens to the rental income I'm already receiving? Ruby's eyes gleamed. It gets pooled with the other family resources. Managed properly. You'll get your fair share, of course. Which would be? We're thinking 15%. Very generous for someone who's new to real estate investment. 15%. Of my own properties. That seems low, I said mildly. Oh, but you have to consider the management fees, maintenance costs, legal expenses. When you factor in everything we'll be handling for you, 15% is quite fair. I nodded thoughtfully, then stood up and walked to my laptop. You know, Ruby, you've been so thorough with your research. I wonder if you've seen everything. What do you mean? I opened my laptop and pulled up the security footage I'd compiled. Well, since we're sharing family information now, I thought you might be interested in some research of my own. Ruby's smile flickered as I turned the screen toward her. There she was, clear as day, talking to my landlord. Then the footage of her with the unknown man outside the real estate office. Finally, the damning video of her at Morgan's parents' house. That's from Sunday night, I said conversationally. 2 days before your first visit. Interesting timing, don't you think? The color drained from Ruby's face. Patricia leaned forward, squinting at the screen, her expression growing more alarmed by the second. You were watching me? I was protecting myself. Just like my grandmother taught me. I clicked to another window showing the property trust documents. You see, while you were hiring private investigators, I was making sure these apartments could never be touched by anyone. Ever. Ruby's eyes darted across the legal language on my screen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Let me guess, I continued, my voice calm and steady. You thought I'd sign because I'm the quiet one. The teacher who doesn't understand business. The new wife who'd do anything to fit in with her husband's family. Blake, you don't understand the bigger picture. Oh, I understand perfectly. Your father owes $200,000. My apartments are worth exactly what he needs to save his business. You figured you could manipulate me into signing them over, probably convinced yourself it was for everyone's good. Ruby's confidence was cracking like ice in spring. How did you? Who told you about Dad's business? The same way you found out about my inheritance. Research. Patricia was standing now, backing toward the door. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I should probably... No, Patricia, you should stay, I said firmly. You should hear what kind of documents you almost notarized. The front door opened and Morgan's voice called out. Blake? I saw Ruby's car outside. He appeared in the doorway, still in his work clothes, and stopped short when he saw the tableau. Ruby pale and shaking, Patricia clutching her briefcase like a shield, me standing calmly beside my laptop. What's going on? He asked. I turned the laptop toward him. Your sister hired a private investigator to research my inheritance. Then she tried to trick me into signing over 3 apartments worth $400,000. Morgan's eyes moved from the screen to Ruby to the papers spread across my coffee table. I watched his face change as understanding dawned. Ruby. His voice was barely a whisper. Tell me this isn't what it looks like. Ruby straightened, trying to regain her composure. Morgan, you don't understand. Dad's business is in trouble. Real trouble. You need to steal from my wife? It's not stealing. We were creating a family trust. Where she gets 15% of her own properties. I interjected quietly. Morgan's face went through a series of emotions. Shock, disappointment, and finally anger. How could you, Ruby? How could you do this to her? To us? I was trying to help. Ruby's voice rose, desperation creeping in. Dad's going to lose everything if we don't do something. So you decided to take everything from Blake instead? I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out an envelope Harold had prepared for me yesterday. Ruby, I think it's time you left. But first, this is for you. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope and unfolded the cease and desist letter. As she read, what little color remained in her face disappeared completely. A restraining order, she whispered. If you contact me again about my properties, yes. If you hire any more investigators to research my finances, yes. If you so much as drive by my building, yes. I kept my voice level, professional. My lawyer was very thorough. Patricia was already packing up her notary supplies. I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson. I had no idea. It's not your fault, Patricia. You were lied to. Ruby stood on shaking legs, the papers sliding from her hands to scatter across my floor. Blake, please. You don't understand what this means for our family. I understand perfectly, I said. It means you'll have to find another way to solve your father's problems. One that doesn't involve stealing from me. Morgan stepped aside as Ruby walked toward the door, her earlier confidence completely shattered. At the threshold, she turned back one last time. You'll regret this, she said, but there was no power behind the words. Just the empty threat of someone who'd lost everything. No, I said quietly. I don't think I will. The door closed behind them and silence filled my apartment. Morgan stood in the middle of my living room, staring at the scattered papers on the floor. I'm so sorry, he said finally. I had no idea how bad things had gotten. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't seen before. Shame. Real, genuine shame for what his family had tried to do. I know you didn't, I said. But now you do. Morgan and I stood in that silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The scattered papers on my floor looked like the remnants of a battle, which I suppose they were. I need to call work, he said finally, pulling out his phone. Tell them I won't be in for the rest of the day. While he made the call, I gathered Ruby's documents and fed them through my paper shredder, watching each page turn into confetti. There was something deeply satisfying about destroying what she'd worked so hard to create. Morgan hung up and sat heavily on my couch. Blake, I need you to tell me everything. From the beginning. No more secrets. So I did. I told him about Grandma Rose's warnings, about my decision to keep the inheritance private, about Ruby's manipulations and my investigation. He listened without interrupting, his face growing paler with each revelation. God, he said when I finished. I helped her, didn't I? Every time I dismissed your concerns, every time I told you to trust her, I was helping her manipulate you. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have listened to you instead of automatically taking my family's side. He ran his hands through his hair. My own wife was trying to protect herself from my family, and I was too blind to see it. The pain in his voice was real, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I was talking to my partner instead of Ruby's brother. What happens now? I asked. Now I make some changes. Morgan's jaw was set with determination I'd never seen before. Starting with my job. 3 days later, he walked into his father's construction office and quit. Not a 2 weeks notice, not a gradual transition. He cleaned out his desk, handed over his company keys and walked out. His father called that night, his voice booming through the phone speaker. Morgan, son, let's talk about this. Family businesses have disagreements, but we work through them. Dad, Morgan said, his voice steady, what Ruby tried to do wasn't a disagreement. It was theft. And the fact that you knew about it makes you just as guilty. Now hold on. Did you know about her plan or not? A long pause. She mentioned some ideas about consolidating family assets. Did you know she was targeting Blake's inheritance specifically? Another pause, longer this time. Ruby said Blake had come into some property. That's all I need to hear. Morgan hung up. His mother tried next, crying through voicemails about family unity and misunderstandings. Morgan deleted them without listening to the ends. Ruby herself made one last attempt, showing up at Morgan's new office 2 weeks later. He worked for a different construction company now, one that had no connection to his father's failing business. She cornered him in the parking lot, tears streaming down her face. Morgan, please. Dad's going to lose everything. Then he should have thought of that before he let you try to steal from my wife. I wasn't stealing. I was trying to save our family. By destroying my marriage? By lying to Blake? By hiring investigators to spy on her? Morgan shook his head. You crossed a line, Ruby. Multiple lines. But we're family. Blake is my family now. You made me choose and I chose her. Ruby's face crumpled. You can't just cut us off. Watch me. And he did. Morgan blocked their numbers, returned their letters unopened, and declined every invitation to family gatherings. When his parents showed up at our apartment unannounced, he spoke to them through the door but didn't let them in. "This is temporary," his mother called through the wood. "Families forgive. Families work things out." "Some things can't be worked out," Morgan replied. "Some lines can't be uncrossed." The isolation from his family was hard on him. I found him staring out the window sometimes, lost in thought. But when I asked if he regretted his decision, he was always quick to answer. "Never. What they tried to do to you was unforgivable. I just wish I'd seen it sooner." Our marriage changed after that. We started talking about money, really talking. I showed him the trust documents, explained how the rental income worked, walked him through my grandmother's financial philosophy. "She was brilliant," he said, studying the property management reports. "Building wealth so quietly that no one even knew she had it. She said the best security is the kind nobody knows about." Smart woman. I can see where you get it. We established our own financial boundaries. Separate accounts for our individual incomes, a joint account for household expenses, and complete transparency about everything. No more secrets, no more assumptions. Meanwhile, Ruby's world was falling apart in ways I hadn't expected. Her parents, facing the reality of their son's permanent estrangement, began to see her schemes differently. The private investigator she'd hired had been expensive. Money they couldn't afford to lose. Her manipulation had cost them not just Morgan, but the last of their savings. I heard through Morgan's former co-workers that Ruby's father's business had indeed failed. Bank foreclosure, asset seizure, the whole nightmare she'd been trying to prevent. Ironically, the money she'd spent trying to steal my apartments might have been enough to save the company if she'd used it properly. Ruby herself disappeared from our lives completely. No more phone calls, no more surprise visits, no more threats. Morgan heard from a mutual friend that she'd moved to another state, ostensibly for a fresh start, but more likely running from the wreckage she'd created. "Good," Morgan said when he told me. "Maybe now she'll learn that actions have consequences." 6 months after the confrontation, I made a decision that would have made my grandmother proud. I used the first year's rental income to establish the Rose Williams Foundation for Women's Financial Education. It started small, just workshops at the local community center teaching young women about budgeting, saving, and building credit. But it grew quickly. Women hungry for financial knowledge but afraid to ask questions found a safe space to learn. "Your grandmother would love this," Morgan said, helping me organize registration forms for our first major workshop. "She always said money was freedom. I want other women to feel that freedom too." The foundation became my passion project. We taught everything from basic banking to real estate investment, from credit repair to retirement planning. I brought in guest speakers, successful businesswomen, financial advisors, even Harold Brennan, who donated his legal services for women starting their own businesses. 1 year after Ruby's failed scheme, I stood in front of 50 women at our largest workshop yet, looking out at faces eager to learn what my grandmother had taught me. "Financial independence isn't about having millions of dollars," I told them. "It's about having enough to make your own choices. Enough to say no when someone tries to take advantage of you. Enough to protect what matters most." In the front row, a young teacher raised her hand. "But what if family pressure makes it hard to save? What if people think you're being selfish?" I smiled, thinking of my grandmother's weathered hands and wise eyes. "Then you smile, you stay quiet about your plans, and you build your security anyway. Because the people who call you selfish for protecting yourself are usually the same people who want to take what you've built." After the workshop, Morgan and I drove past my 3 apartment buildings. They looked the same as always. Modest, well-maintained, quietly valuable. But they meant something different to me now. They weren't just my inheritance anymore. They were proof that my grandmother's wisdom lived on. They were the foundation of a marriage built on honesty instead of assumptions. They were the seed money for a foundation that would teach other women to protect themselves. Most importantly, they were mine. Completely, legally, unassailably mine. And I'd learned how to use that ownership not just for security but for power. The power to help others, the power to set boundaries, the power to choose my own family based on love and respect instead of blood and obligation. The 3 apartments had given me more than financial security. They'd given me a voice I never knew I had. And now, finally, I knew exactly how to use it. If this story of protecting what's yours had you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Blake calmly showed Ruby the security footage, watching her confidence crumble completely. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.